We are joined by Justin Waddell and Alicio Valle, who will go ahead and introduce themselves. They've got an awesome conversation for you. Two experts in the impact management space. They'll tell you a little bit more about their experience, but you're super lucky to have both of them here presenting to you today. And I'm really excited for this conversation, and I will let you two take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amanda. And hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for dialing in today. My name is Justin Waddell. I help to support our impact management solutions here at Bonterra. And these webinars that we host, these conversations that we host, are really designed to provide you with best practices and insights that you can immediately apply to your work, regardless of where your organization may be in their technology journey. So today we'll be discussing how to become a data-driven nonprofit with our in-house expert and senior solutions architect, Alicio Valle. Now, fair warning today, we are both a little stricken by cold. So if you notice that our voices are a little bit deeper, a little bit smokier than usual, we're not old Hollywood stars. We are just dealing with a little bit of congestion, and we're going to get through it together. So you can expect Alicio and I's conversation to go for about 20 minutes today, after which we'll take questions from the audience. As Amanda mentioned, if you have questions as we go through, feel free to just put them in the Q&A and we'll address them during that question period. Now, really, by the end of today, we want to make sure that you are more comfortable and confident about what it looks like to use data to drive greater impact for your nonprofit. We're really passionate about this topic here at Bonterra. This is something that's really important to us and something that really resonates deeply with Alicio's experience in particular. So I'm really excited for you to go through this conversation, hopefully pick up some good tidbits that you can bring into your daily work and leave here ultimately with a better understanding of why data matters, how you can collect it, use it more effectively, and then ultimately tie that all back to how does becoming more data-driven really help with your engagement of funders. So excited for that. Today's conversation is a conversation. So if you're used to a ton of slides, it's not necessarily what we're going to get today. If you'd like more slides in the future, just let us know in the feedback. But we hope that you get a lot out of this and this unique format. So without further ado, let's get into it. So I'm going to start with my first question for Alicio, which is really just a little bit about you. Before we get into the subject matter, I always like to learn, where are experts coming from? So Alicio, could you share a little bit more about your role at Bonterra, kind of your experience in the nonprofit sector, and what brings you to this work?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Justin. And hey, everyone. Hope you're doing well. Love seeing all the different places in the chat. That's awesome. But yeah, my name is Alicio Valle, Solutions Architect here at Bonterra, just a fancy name for product specialist. I cover in detail all the different products we offer, answer any questions that future clients have, as well as develop the systems and structure to fit organizational needs. And I have a unique background. I wasn't always in the software field. I come from the world of social work, got my master's degree in social work at Colorado State University, and worked for several years as a school social worker in the Denver metropolitan area, as well as some residential work as well. My love of software kind of taught myself how to develop and build solutions out, saw this opportunity and joined this team in 2022 and have been here ever since, and have really enjoyed this software and meeting a bunch of wonderful people at organizations across the country.
All right, I love it. Well, let's get into the meat of the conversation then. Let's start with grounding ourselves in just why data is important. Like, I feel like a lot of us know that data is important, but beyond that, how you should use it, where it should come into the equation is often pretty ambiguous. Like, should it be part of daily decisions, quarterly or annual lookbacks? Are there specific things that you should use it for and specific things maybe not? I think these are a lot of kind of like the open questions when we start to dig into data that come up at our organizations. So Alicio, what's your initial impression of how nonprofits should be thinking about using data in the first place?
Yeah, so I think as technology kind of works its way into our everyday lives, everyday work days, data becomes more and more important. There's more tools to gather data. And then with that data, we can make more informed decisions on how we go about our practice, measuring outcomes for our practice, delivering better data on grant management and grant applications. So really it's a plethora of ways we can think about it, right? But I think at the end of the day, whatever is going to help us capture data accurately, reduce data falling through the cracks, and allow us to easily draw those outcomes is where we're going to see the most benefit, right? So I'll kind of reference back to that, throughout our conversation today, talk about ways we can achieve that with our platform here.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes sense. And I like that you mentioned that first step of the process, like capturing data accurately. It's clear that like data is a need, but data collection is often really challenging. I think one of the things that myself and I know quite a few colleagues get caught up on in the nonprofit sector is just what level of data do you need? Like how small a detail is too small? How big a detail is too big? What are some of the more practical ways that nonprofits should be thinking about collecting and analyzing data?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the space is so broad. And what we end up seeing is, nonprofits doing a really good job of delivering things like assessments and getting that qualitative and quantitative data, but also measuring the impact of that data across a variety of levels, right? From the macro level, seeing how we're affecting communities, seeing long-term outcomes in state level data, government level data, all the way down to the micro environment. How are assessment scores growing over time? How are specific impacts with clients growing over time? So again, it really varies, right? Doing those things like community-based assessments, micro individual level assessments, all the way down to more broad demographic reports and who you're serving. I think the important piece to note here is just having that multitude of ways you can go about capturing it and having the flexibility to capture what you want at the end of the day is most important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, digging into a little of what you just talked about, could you help to define those different types of assessments for our audience, just so they can grab on to what they may already be using or want to use?
Yeah, absolutely. One we see a lot in the field is things like needs assessments, self-sufficiency matrices for community-based assessments. But again, the key to kind of what we offer is the flexibility in your approach, right? So you can take assessments that you make in-house and leverage those, transfer them to our software platforms and be able to start capturing that data. But you can also go ahead and use pre-built templates, like I mentioned before, the self-sufficiency matrix, the KC life skills assessments, things we see commonly in the field, have those on day one and be able to kind of leverage those and track data that way as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's a really helpful perspective. So once you've collected all of this data and you have the analysis out of the way, I think one of the big challenges is what I refer to as the so what of it all. Like, how are you actually using this data to move forward the work of your organization and its impact in the community? What guidance do you have for nonprofits on best practices for how you might incorporate that data into organizational decision making?
Yeah, so I can paint a familiar picture here, probably for a lot of people on this call. But I refer to it as spreadsheet hell, right? So a lot of organizations are in this place where we're dumping everything into spreadsheets. We're utilizing a multitude of different software applications that are dumping data to different places. So having that data in an organized place is key to answering this question first. And then from there, once we have the data in an organized place, we can then slice and dice and be able to interpret what our specific outcomes are. If we're looking for assessing a need as we're applying for a grant, we can be able to say, okay, I have this set of data. Let me filter down by this. Let me see this progress over time, then shift it that way. Whereas if we're looking on a more micro level with our individual clients, I have this set of data here. Show me first, middle, exit assessment scores. I can see how this specific client's growing over time, the specific group of clients is growing over time, and where I can kind of fill the gaps in my services, again, to better improve outcomes that way. So again, I keep referring to a multitude of ways, but that's because our variation of what we need in terms of data capture in this space is so broad. But the importance of having something that can deliver those different metrics and be flexible on the fly is key.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on steps that nonprofits might need to take with regards to just their organizational culture to be able to have conversations around data and use it effectively in decision making?
Yeah. I think what we don't want, but what we see often in the field is disjointed targets. One group of leadership wants to meet these metrics. The other group thinks it's more important to meet these metrics. So when it comes to data at the end of the day, it's as good as the people that are entering it and keeping track of it. And we need to get everybody on the same page, reaching for the same kind of goals and targets, and organizing your data around those goals to attack those targets and goals.
Yeah. Yeah, when you refer to those disjointed targets, are you thinking both internal teams and committees, working with your board, working with different funders, just everything kind of fracturing because of those different stakeholders?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Oftentimes what you see coming from the top down is different than what you're seeing, on the bottom, what you work in the field.
Mm-hmm.
So again, just referencing like what's most important, what are we looking to measure, making sure everyone's on the same page to achieve that set of goals, to keep that data clean, moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's definitely, I think, a continuous challenge that never gets easier, even as you put the processes in place. Okay, well, so we just touched on boards a little bit, and I think that helps to transition us to this talk of what it means to engage funders more effectively. And I think that's a big part of the value proposition, becoming more data driven. It's that you're not only improving your outcomes, but also protecting and securing more funding. How does how do the dots connect here? How does, if you improve your data collection and use of data, how does that ultimately get you to stronger funder engagement?
Yeah. I think the more data you have, the more organized it is, and the less of it falling through the cracks as possible.
Hmm.
Allows you to build a solution where you can go ahead and take all that data and deliver outcomes and base your kind of grant seeking and funding seeking off of realistic data that's accurate, that you're currently tracking and you're currently utilizing every day. Um, if you're using something that's a bit disjointed, maybe you have spreadsheets and people falling through the cracks, you could be missing out on key things that funders are looking for, right? So again, having that organized framework, having your data flowing to a place where you can easily pull it forward, easily kind of give whatever funders are looking for in a quick turn style, and not spend a lot of time kind of pulling that information forward, is a way we can kind of increase our funding outcomes that way, make things more efficient.
Okay, that makes sense. I want to spend the next couple minutes bringing this into the real world. You know, you've met and worked with a lot of different types of organizations, and we can keep them anonymous in this conversation. But I'd love it if you could share a few examples of organizations who have taken this approach, maybe some of the challenges that they faced in really adopting this approach, and then the outcomes they may have been able to gain from it.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's start with, so I'll have some general numbers I'll share across the board, but
Mhm.
let's start with kind of the challenges we often see. So typically organizations are working with little resources,
Mhm.
and they're already stretched thin. So oftentimes we'll see kind of taking on a new platform and going through training and kind of reworking systems as an initial challenge up front. Number of different ways we seek to kind of meet that through training, through consultants that we offer as well. Also, platform built on ease of use, right? So really easy to kind of pick up and learn. But we often see that. Then we see kind of restructuring, moving from spreadsheets, although they're unorganized. A lot of organizations are using these for a long period of time and they're comfortable with them, right? So different system means different structure, and having to kind of rework what you're currently doing for data capturing on a new platform takes some initial legwork, right? So that kind
Mhm.
of can be off-putting, can be challenging. But once organizations get to that place where they feel comfortable with the new system, where they're trained, where they have their data flowing and everything's going to the right places, that's where we really see the return on investment. So one customer, and again, I'll cut out name here, but they saw a 566% increase in their 3-year return on investment. And they also saw a 75% reduction time in data spent or time spent on data capturing. And that's delivered from a number of different ways, from online web forms to kind of as you're filling out forms in the platform, flowing into reports, right? It's reducing steps to organizing your data. It's doing that for you automatically in the background. But then in general, on average, we see 3.5 times percent more service delivered across the board, 35% time less spent on data delivery, and 40% less time spent on reporting and analytics. Right. So across the board, you can think about your return on investment in all those categories, what you're currently spending time-wise on each of those categories, and how adopting a solution can kind of help streamline that for you and save you money up top.
Mhm. Yeah, that's great. And I like the points that you made about those challenges, like especially like in the nonprofit sector, we're often pretty under-resourced in terms of what we have to work with, in terms of the staff capacity that we have to tap into. And so we're trying to make a lot from a little. And that can be difficult as you look at this process. And something that I really always like to emphasize here is that technology, no matter which solution you're using, is not a silver bullet. You've got to have your process in place so that that technology, that solution that you ultimately decide to use can make that process even more efficient, can help you take that process to the next level. And I feel like it's a bit of what you're talking about here in terms of those initial challenges when you're transitioning to something new. Like, you can't expect it to change your world overnight. It's definitely going to be going to have some growing pains. Let's put it that way. But it's something that I think when your whole team is able to commit to it and have candid conversations about what's working, what's not working as you go through that transformation, it can be really helpful. Now, do you have any advice to teams who are kind of having those internal conversations about revisiting process as they look at data collection?
Yeah, I would say, at the end of the day, it has to be approached with an open mind, right? And where we may see some struggles up front, the results of this, adopting a new system that's more efficient is proven long term and over time. So we can kind of get over that hurdle, that initial hurdle there. The outcomes are clear and they're positive. And I would say too, thinking about kind of those long-term outcomes, when it comes to just measuring your data and the work you do and kind of improving the importance of that work, systems and technology can help you deliver that further, right? Being able to live in a world where you can draw specific outcomes on the impact you're making rather quickly, where you can pivot and capture whatever data points you want to in a really easy to use way, are all super important to your practice and can kind of help you, take your practice and take your organization's goals to kind of that next level.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like, in terms of actually moving the work of the organization forward, we've talked about how this can lead to better outcomes for your key stakeholders, those that you're serving in the community. This can lead to better outcomes for those that you're reporting to, whether it's your board, your funders, et cetera. And then I think underlying in what you just said, like, it also leads to better outcomes for the team. When you're getting that time back, when you're feeling more productive, like you can focus on the things that brought you to your organization in the first place, I think that's a really like special feeling and special thing that can not only boost morale, but also just unlock new opportunities in the organization. When you have more time to focus on how you're working your programs and how you might be able to improve them, I mean, that's where the magic happens, when you're not going from fire to fire, but finally kind of like taking a step back and able to look at what does it look like to really improve here.
Absolutely.
That's great. I want to turn it to Q&A in a moment. I think this has been a really helpful start. But before we go there, Alicio, what guidance would you share with nonprofit leaders who are seeking to support their organizations to become more data-driven? Is there a roadmap that you would offer them as far as what the next week, the next 3 months might look like in exploring this?
Yeah, I think looking at what you're currently doing and starting there and thinking about, what's working in current solutions and what's not. And then really focusing in on the impact of that what's not. Is there data falling through the cracks? Is there a lot of time being spent or a lot of time wasted on things that don't need to be? And then taking that and looking at what's out there. If it's Bonterra, if it's other solutions that can kind of reduce that time and reduce that overhead burden, just exploring what's out there and seeing your different options, maybe attending some demos. I'll be leading those if you come onto the Bonterra side, so you can hold me to my word on this side of the equation. But yeah, absolutely. Just starting there, seeing what's working, what's not, and then taking that and seeing what's out there and seeing the different ways you can improve on your data capturing and time spent.
That's great. Yeah, and I think that kind of internal look that you can take as a nonprofit leader at like your priorities and kind of your organization's current pain points, We have, I think, checklists that you can go through just to kind of interrogate where you are in your data-driven journey. And maybe that's something that we can follow up with after this webinar, just to share with everyone who's attended. I think it's helpful to just have those guideposts as you go through, because again, just candidly, this can be a beast of a process, especially if you're coming from spreadsheets, looking at like what is your dream process and like what does it look like to actually use that on a daily basis. That's something that doesn't happen overnight. Thankfully, I found that like in the organizations I've worked with, we've actually ended up having a lot of fun as we go through those conversations. It kind of gets you excited to think about what you could create, and that's again a really special thing to do. So I'll make sure that we share that checklist afterwards. I think with that, we're now at about the 15-minute mark for our conversation. I'd love to open it up to Q&A. I'd love to hear what resonated, what didn't, and maybe some key questions or challenges from folks who are on the line.
Yeah, thank you so much, Justin and Alicio. Super helpful insights. Really appreciate both of you taking some time to share. And if folks are kind of starting that journey and are interested in taking some of these insights, putting them into practice, do want to learn a little bit more about kind of a data focused solution, while we take questions, I'll leave a poll up on the screen if that is you and you are interested in learning more. We'll be sure to chat with you and get somebody in touch. But please continue to put your questions in this Q&A section. This is meant to be what I like to call hot seat coaching. So if you have problems and you're looking for some solutions, this is kind of your time to chat with some of our experts here. I'm going to take the first question that came in, which is, what is the most effective way to approach metrics to demonstrate overall impact when your organization offers and provides multiple services? So this one's from Trayvon, who's saying that we provide, multi-service. So it's hard to show that overall impact and when we don't necessarily know how to approach those metrics. So Alicio, do you have any suggestions, or have you come across that before?
Yeah, this speaks to kind of that spreadsheet situation I was referring to earlier, right? Where it's great, we're capturing all of our data, but it's all kind of sitting in one place, and now we have to decipher it. So in the platforms from our end, just speaking from our perspective, we're going to offer a program level hierarchy. So the different services you provided will be stored under the individual programs. And then as you're entering your data, it'll be locked into those programs. It'll be locked into those services. So when you pull forward that data in our systems, it'll be tied to those services automatically. So you're not having to dig through those spreadsheets or the different platforms and kind of draw those conclusions yourself and those relations yourself. That'll all be done for you in the system here.
Yeah, and I can add to that. I really like this question because I feel like it's very rare that our organizations just do one thing, right? And my answer here is to first figure out what is that story that you're trying to tell your funders and your community. Like if you were to wrap that up in 1 to 2 sentences, what would that story be? And I think that goes back to that first point of like, what are the outcomes that you are trying to communicate in that story? How do all these services come together to benefit your community, your stakeholders, whoever it might be, through those multiple services? And I think when you can figure out that story, it can become easier to figure out how those things layer in. If you have your key takeaway from your story, and then let's say you have 3 programs, and the primary outcome from each of those 3 programs ladders up into that story, that's one way that you could approach this. But again, I think it's about figuring out like what is that change that you're trying to make in your community, and then you can tie those outcomes and that data collection to what you're trying to do there. Hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, super helpful. And that actually kind of ties into a question that came in when Alicio, you were talking about kind of pulling the right data, right, for funders and trying to make sure that you have, all of that organized in the right place. What do you find those key data points are that you think folks are usually looking for? Have you found like kind of like the most common so that folks know where to start when they're saying, okay, this is the data that I actually want to focus on?
Yeah, definitely. So it really varies right across the board, depending on what specific funders are going to ask for, what board members are asking for, and what outcomes you're trying to draw. But typically, across the board, we're wanting to capture things like demographics, wanting to capture things like contact info for quick access, right? And these things can all be captured easily in a profile sheet, be pulled forward in a report in the platform. And then from there, again, relational database sitting in the background. You can tie whatever data points you want to meet the other variety of needs you may meet from your board, from your funders, or for a specific grant that you're writing.
Awesome. Super helpful. Thank you for sharing that. Um, Next question that I saw come in, this one's from Jennifer, who had said, it sounds like our organization is quite typical in keeping our grants and impact information completely separate from our CRM. And Jennifer wants to know if it's best practice to keep it all together, money raised, money distributed, or should folks be tracking it separately? I know you talked about many spreadsheets. So what is the best practice for kind of what to keep in what systems?
Yeah, I think it really depends, right? So what comes to play in this is what's working for you. Is your data falling through the cracks currently? Are you finding holes in that? And that kind of goes back to that evaluation process that Justin and I were touching on a few minutes ago, where it's kind of reflecting on current practices and seeing, what could be better, what's working, what's not. And then when you find that, taking the steps to improve it from there. If you're having to deliver outcomes that are tying maybe the service provided outcomes to the funding given out and you want to see the impact, and if that funding is moving the needle a little bit, maybe it is best practice to have it all in one place if you can do so in an organized fashion. But if they're existing in two separate silos and that's working for you, that flexibility is important, right? So you can have that as well and keep that current process you're utilizing there.
Perfect. Thank you. Justin, did you want to add anything? I can't tell if that looked like you were coming off mute.
No, that was great.
Okay, great. Feel like with so many Zoom meetings, I've mastered the art of like the flinch to the mute button. So a little too ready for that. The next question that came in, I think this kind of, I know, Alicia, you're saying, it kind of depends, right? Can you actually tell how offerings like Bonterra actually help deliver outcomes for impact reporting and grant applications? Kind of give that concrete example for how someone might be using a tool like Bonterra for this.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the reasons why I keep bringing up it depends, and I'll bring it up again here, because this system is built with that in mind. Like it understands, and I know from self-experience too, being in the field, that like your data needs to pivot fast, right? 1 6-month window, we're collecting data for this specific grant. Another one, we're collecting a completely separate data set for a different grant, right? So what our applications offer is that flexible configurability where you can say, okay, I'm going to create a track for this grant, and I'm going to create this data set here. And then next quarter, we're tracking this one. So I'm going to create a different data set here. You can quickly pivot that. You don't have to submit tickets, go through us to do that. You can handle all of that on your own. So you have that flexibility there to do so. And then that's what we're seeing in the field, right? Individuals are applying for grants. They're finding out where these funding sources are. They're seeing what they're asking for. And then they're building out their data sets and begin capturing data, immediately to deliver for those grant applications.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And thinking of trying to stay within this kind of real world examples, and like you're saying, changes are happening constantly. Can you explain what some of the challenges are that you're seeing most nonprofits face right now in the field that is related to data organization? I know sometimes it kind of helps to hear you're not alone. So if you could share what some of those common challenges are, and then maybe some of the hot tips that you would give to folks who are coming to you.
Yeah, so the first thing that came to mind when you said that is disjointed systems. So we are using one CRM for our volunteers, another one for our clients, maybe another one for grant tracking. They're all going to different spreadsheets. Maybe we have an intake form, a Google form that's going to a different place that we need to transfer to the CRM. And we're having all of this kind of manual process going on in the background. We're trying to get all our data in one place. So that's the biggest kind of pitfall we see. With that, data falls through the cracks. We are wasting resources trying to pull this data forward. We're wasting time pulling this data forward. So what we see the biggest change and the biggest asset of acquiring a software like ours or other ones that are out there is the ability to have all that flowing into one place automatically. You're going to build your things like your demographic reports. As you go ahead and intake new clients via web form, that data will flow automatically into those reports. That client folder will be created. You can then match a volunteer record to that client from there, just kind of painting the picture there, right? Everything in one place, so you can easily kind of connect the dots and report on that data on a later date.
Yeah, I'll add to that, which is, let's say that you're already collecting data. You figured out data collection, and now it's how are you actually data driven? I think one thing that I often see is using data for your board meetings, for your funder reports. And that's kind of where it stops. Like sometimes I'll be working with orgs and they'll be like, we're data driven because we make these reports. But then it's a question of how you're bringing it into your practice on a monthly, a weekly, even a daily basis. And I think that next step, that's really hard. And that's where it comes down to, I think, having really candid conversations with your team about where and when it makes sense to bring that data in, to do a quick look back on how is this program doing? How are we serving stakeholders at this specific juncture in our programming? And where might we improve? And I think part of that is really creating a safe space for people to take in that data, because you never want it to be like a performance review. It's really like we're looking at this together, trying to improve together. But I think that the kind of change management piece is that next level. Once you get data collection down, how do you integrate it into what you do?
Awesome. Sorry, I couldn't find my own mute button there for a second. Thanks for adding into that conversation, Justin. Appreciate your insights as well. I just saw a question come in through the chat. So, Alicia, I don't know if you can take this one. They're asking if they can know and understand the relationship of this application interacting on insights with AI and CoPilot.
Yeah, that's a great question. So AI is at the forefront of pretty much every technology company right now. What we've done, and I was actually a part of building this out, was we created a grant matching and grant application system utilizing AI in the platform, where we took organizational data by combing their websites, combing whatever data we had on them with their permission, of course, and we matched grant applications that were open to fit that organization. And then pulling data forward from their mission, from their outcomes, we were able to build out initial kind of grant application data. So they can go ahead and generate a grant application, have the data filled out for them, and they can copy and paste it to the application itself. So that's kind of us scratching the surface and entering the realm and world of AI. That's our first kind of solution we're building out here at Bonterra for that. Much more to come. Currently, as it pertains to CoPilot, there's no, the environments in our platforms are all no code. So there's no kind of CoPilot going on currently. There's no SQL statements being written or anything like that. There's no real use case for it yet. As we continue to progress, though, we're going to be looking to see where we can kind of insert that stuff. I know our developers are currently using CoPilot as well in their own environments.
Awesome. Thank you for taking that one. Folks, if you have more questions, please do not be shy to put them into the Q&A. I'll give folks a couple of moments to ask any final questions. Looks like we have one that came in from Amy, who is wondering, to what extent are the demographic fields customizable? Can reporting be modified to select different fields? Thinking about funders having different requirements and the ease of adjusting data.
Yeah, so they're completely configurable. And Amy, I would love to have you on our demonstration to kind of show you this in full. I'm just throwing that out there. But yeah, completely configurable. You can build these forms out. And what you're going to see if you do enter a demonstration or find a video online is it's all click and drag. So you'll have kind of your form you're building out. Say it's a demographic form. You'll find your text box. you'll edit your text box to say, enter your name, and you'll have maybe a drop-down button, and you'll call that drop-down button racial identity. And then from there, you'll add all your different options completely custom in that drop-down. So you can ask whatever questions you want to and have whatever fields and answers you want to populate.
And thanks for sharing that, Alicio, and hopefully that answers your question, Amy. I'm gonna take that one step further, which when you talk about things being customizable, right? As Justin mentioned, we want this to be about the best practices, right? And obviously our tools can help facilitate that. Can you just tell us like why that is a best practice, why it's built in so that things can be customizable, and what folks are looking for, like Amy, when they say, hey, we want to be able to move things around?
Yeah, absolutely. I think referencing back to something I said earlier, data changes fast in the field, right? Your requirements change fast in the field. And, there could be new developments in new identities. There could be specific grants set to capturing specific identities that you were previously capturing before. So being able to go in there and quickly add to that list, remove from that list, or create an entirely different form just tracking for that specific grant, you have the option to do that. And what we see oftentimes with other solutions is that there is no quick turn with that. Maybe you find a grant and you want to start collecting data now. Well, you have to go in and submit a ticket. And then that team has to go ahead and, you have to wait a week for them to turn around and change your demographic fields. And maybe they make a mistake and you have to submit another ticket and you have to go back and do it again. This solution is not going to work like that. You'll be able to go in there, you'll edit the fields yourself, go into your admin tools, make the changes you want immediately. And then once you do that, publish it, it's live and ready to go.
Awesome. Thank you. Haven't seen any new questions roll in, so I'll sit here a minute. We can stare at each other so that folks can get their questions answered. Justin, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add or interject, but I will say, Amy, if you are looking to do a demonstration, or anyone else here is, I know we mentioned that's really the best way to kind of see in depth, or if you have those more specific questions and maybe want to see how this tool would work for your organization more specifically, definitely follow up with us. That's really the best way to kind of, as Alicio mentioned, like see it in action. So don't be shy. We love to talk to you. So we'll leave that there, but gonna see if looks like we had one more question come in. So I will go ahead and take Katie's question. Thank you for saving me from rambling on for another minute. Katie had asked, what advice do you offer to organizations in terms of the ethics of collecting and using specific data? Are there any tips to kind of avoid tips to maintain public trust? I know data can be sensitive. So Alicio, do you have any experience with clients where that's been the case, or anyone else?
Yeah, I think a key thing here off the bat is making sure your system, whatever that may be, is secure, is fully HIPAA, FERPA compliant, meets those security measures on the back end, right? Any kind of data breach, could be critical. So keeping that in mind, and then making sure you're signing off on your proper waivers and you're collecting that information as well, and what's being shared with referral partners, not being shared. Again, it all comes back to kind of looking internally and seeing what those current processes are and then where those gaps are to improve. But those are the two kind of keys I would kind of focus on there from my perspective.
Awesome. Thank you. Looks like we had another question about the tool specifically. Wondering if, along with the customizable reports, are you able to create dashboards of any kind to kind of convey what that data is supposed to be showing?
Yeah. So there's two dashboarding type tools in the platform. One's going to be kind of what we call our bulletin page. When you first log in, you'll see highlighted all your reports kind of sitting there for you. Things like maybe your caseload or different data points you're tracking. You can have all that kind of live feed sitting there on your homepage. The other is going to be a business intelligence tool. We don't use Power BI. We use SAP, but that's with our enterprise tier package. And with that package, you can go ahead and build out custom dashboards. You can save those as HTML files to embed to your website. you can go ahead and save them as PDFs, and you can schedule deliver those out to key stakeholders as well.
Perfect. And what would you say the organization who would need that level of reporting looks like, right? When you're thinking of kind of the who and what challenges they might be facing and needing to overcome to say, okay, we need a next level reporting capability.
Yeah, I think, typically what we see is bigger organizations are going to need that package, right? Things like state level, local governments, anyone who's handling kind of big, huge data sets will need that tool there. But also, it's not just limited to them, right? If you want to be able to kind of schedule deliver reports out to individuals outside of your organization, there's a ton of good features that come with that tool that don't come with the kind of middle tier, lower tier reporting tool. So it really just depends. But typically, what we see is kind of those bigger, public sector, state level, school-based, organizations carrying a lot of data.
Awesome. And at the risk of overpolling you, which if I am, you can just let me know in the chat. But if you are curious, like where your organization fits in that scope, right? And you do want to chat to somebody, this is really just the best way for us to be able to make sure we follow up with you. So if you want to know some of these nitty-gritty questions or want to have that more in-depth conversation, I will leave that up just for a few moments. Again, you can ignore it. It's for the folks who are maybe still here and feel like they have some more detailed questions. I do want to make sure that we understand that and can get somebody on our team to chat with you to answer those questions. So I will leave that up for just a moment while I see if there are any other final questions from anyone, or any final remarks, maybe from Justin or Alicio, if you have anything that you wanted to add, just before we kind of close out the Q&A section, close out today's session. Is there any kind of like last minute tips or recommendations you would want to leave folks with, who are looking to become more data driven, really understand what that means and what they can look for?
Yeah, no last minute tips from me. I just want to thank you all for joining us for this 45 minutes. I know it's hard to find time in your day at nonprofit organizations, and yeah, we really appreciate it and hope you found this valuable and look forward to talking to you in the future.
Yeah, likewise. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you to Alicio, Amanda, and everyone who joined. I hope you got something from this conversation that you can bring into your work today and tomorrow.
Yeah, I want to extend a big thank you on behalf of the audience, myself to both Alicio and Justin. Justin, thank you for helping kind of guide the conversation, ask some really thought-provoking questions, and Alicio for providing your expertise. I know you have a ton of experience with working with nonprofits, working with these clients, working within this space, and really appreciate you bringing in kind of both your Bonterra expertise and your social work expertise and everything in between, to really make sure that this was a meaningful conversation. So I really appreciate both of you as well, taking some time out of your day to help inform everybody. And hopefully folks are feeling a little bit more inspired and less intimidated by the notion of being data driven and what that really means. So really appreciate you all for being here. Again, I hope you can see the thanks rolling into the chat for you both. So much appreciated on our end. And that will take us to a conclusion here. And I want to say thank you. Hope to see you at our next webinar. Keep an eye on your email next week for the recording from us, as well as some additional resources that Justin mentioned. We'll be excited to share this and that with you. So don't be afraid to find us in your email, find us in your inbox. We really appreciate you all being here. Hope to see you at future webinars. Hope this format was helpful. Let us know. It's really fun to have a bit more of a conversation than always kind of seeing PowerPoints, to Justin's point at the beginning. So I know I found it refreshing. I hope you did as well. And I hope everyone has a great rest of their day. Take care, everyone.